Did you know that most people who try to quit an addiction fail within the first few weeks? And did you know that the brain of someone struggling with addiction can take up to 2 years to slowly return to normal? It's not because they're weak. It's not because they lack willpower. It's because their brain has been hijacked. Addiction isn't just drugs or alcohol. Addiction can be your phone, social media, gaming, gambling, food, shopping, even toxic relationships. Anything you know is destroying you, but you still can't stop. That's already a form of addiction. Behind every addiction, there are usually deep wounds, a stressful or unstable home, traumas no one ever addressed. That heavy emptiness inside, feeling like you're never enough. So when people say, just quit, it's not that hard, they have no idea what you're actually fighting. Because you're not fighting a habit, you're fighting a brain that has been rewired against your will. In this video, I'm not here to judge you, and I'm not here to give you a magical sentence that instantly cures addiction. Instead, we're going to do something different. Understand the neuroscience behind addiction. Learn how to use Eastern philosophies like Kishi Kaisei, die and be reborn, combined with kaizen, improving 1% every day, and ikigai, your reason to wake up in the morning, not just to stop using, but to build a life where addiction simply no longer fits. But before we go any further, I need to make one thing absolutely clear. What you're about to hear does not replace medical professionals, therapists, or support programs. If you're dealing with drug addiction, alcohol dependence, prescription abuse, or anything life-threatening, please see a doctor, join a support group, and talk to someone you trust. This video is a map, but you still need real-life companions to walk with you through the long, uphill road ahead. The story you're about to hear isn't about being stronger, and it isn't about just say no. It's the story of a young woman who hit rock bottom, and a journey of rebirth where neuroscience joined hands with Eastern wisdom, helping her slowly climb out of the darkness. And maybe, somewhere in her story, you'll see a part of yourself, the sleepless nights, the promises you broke to yourself, the moments you felt dead inside even while breathing. If right now you're struggling with any form of addiction, or you love someone who's drowning in it, I want you to do one small thing. Stay with this video until the end. Sometimes one insight, one sentence, one moment is enough to begin a new chapter. And if you feel this message deserves to reach more people, please like the video, subscribe to Life Philosophy, and if someone you love needs this, send it to them. A single link you share today might become the lifeline that pulls someone out of the dark. Now, let's begin the journey, from addiction to Kishi Kaisei, from dying inside your own life to being reborn into someone new. Part 1. Why addiction is not something you quit if you want to. When people look at someone struggling with addiction, they often say things like, just stop. It's not that hard. You just need more willpower. If you really wanted to quit, you would. But the truth is, if it were really that simple, the world wouldn't have millions of people trapped in addiction every single year. To understand addiction, we have to stop seeing it as a choice and start seeing it as a storm shaped by layers of psychological, neurological, emotional, and environmental wounds. A child growing up in a home filled with yelling, pressure, or emotional neglect. An adult carrying heartbreaks, silent loneliness, or that constant feeling of being invisible. A soul that has spent years believing it is never enough, never loved, or never wanted. All of these experiences carve a deep, silent emptiness inside a person, a void that no one sees, but that they feel every single day, and one day, they stumble upon something that fills that void, even temporarily. It might be drugs, alcohol, stimulants, or even behaviors like binge eating, gambling, scrolling endlessly, or chasing unhealthy relationships. The first time, it's just a try. The second time, it feels like relief. And slowly, it becomes the only thing that makes the pain quiet down. That's why addiction isn't a moral flaw. It isn't someone living irresponsibly. It's a distorted survival mechanism created when a wounded heart receives no healing. What makes addiction so dangerous is this. The brain doesn't know the difference between real healing and temporary escape. It only knows, this makes me feel better right now. So it remembers. It repeats. It strengthens that pathway. And the loop begins. From that moment on, addiction is no longer a decision. It becomes a neurological reflex. A biological habit carved deep into the brain. This explains why someone addicted knows they're destroying themselves. They know their family is heartbroken. They know their health is collapsing. They know every use pushes them closer to the edge, but they still keep using, not because they want to, but because their brain has been rewired. It's like driving a car downhill with faulty brakes. You can see the crash coming, but you can't stop it with willpower alone. Understanding this helps us look at addiction differently, with less judgment, less blame, fewer "why don't you just quit?" and more compassion, because only when we truly understand the nature of addiction do we begin the healing journey with the right mindset, not blaming ourselves, not punishing ourselves, not thinking we're failures, but realizing something inside me hurt so badly. I had to cling to this to survive. And here's the truth. The journey to overcoming addiction doesn't begin with cutting the substance. It begins with one question: which part of me has never been healed? That is the real starting point of freedom. Part 2. Amelia's story. When a bright life quietly falls apart. Amelia was 23 when everything began to collapse. From the outside, anyone would have said she was going places. Smart, polite, always full of energy, and above all, she had a very clear dream. To become an architect, designing sustainable homes and creating spaces that made life feel meaningful. But life often hides cracks. No one can see. Since the age of 14. Amelia carried things she never dared to speak about. A father who became an alcoholic after losing his job. A mother working herself to exhaustion, barely breathing by the end of each day. And a little girl growing up with a silent, painful belief: I'm never good enough. That feeling stayed with her like a wound that never fully healed. Not deep enough to break her, but never shallow enough to let her live in peace. It carved an emptiness inside her that even she couldn't name. At 19. In college, someone handed her something to help with stress. Just a little. That's what they said. The first time she tried it out of curiosity. The second time, because it made her feel lighter. Then it became weekly. Then daily. And slowly, her life began spiraling downward exactly in the way she feared most. Her grades collapsed. Her closest friends drifted away. Her mother cried every night looking at her daughter's empty eyes. Amelia knew she was destroying everything, but she couldn't stop. That's the part most people will never understand. Addiction is not a choice, and people struggling with it are not ignorant of right and wrong. They know exactly what's happening, but their brain is no longer listening to them. One Tuesday morning, Amelia looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the person staring back. She had lost 26 pounds. She'd lost her internship. And the night before, her mother had broken down in tears, whispering, "Sweetheart, what's happening to you?" That was the moment Amelia faced a terrifying truth. Either she found help, or she was going to die, not metaphorically, not in a poetic sense. Literally, her hands trembling, she picked up her phone and called a support center. They referred her to a therapist, a man who, as Amelia later said, he was the first person who saw my pain, without judging me. His name was Kenji Yamamoto, and from that moment on, Amelia's life began a completely different chapter. Part 3. The brain hijacked, when willpower is no longer the one driving. When Amelia sat across from Dr. Kenji in their second session, she couldn't even lift her head. She knew she was destroying her life. She knew she was breaking her mother's heart. She knew everything. What she didn't know was why, even with all the fear and guilt eating her alive, she still kept sliding downhill. Kenji understood that. He pulled a grey model of the human brain closer and spoke gently. "Amelia, before we do anything, you need to understand what's happening in here." He tapped the frontal area. This is the prefrontal cortex. Think of it as the CEO of your brain. It makes decisions, controls impulses, thinks about the future, and separates I should from I shouldn't. It's the part that allows us to live with reason. Then he moved his finger to a deeper region inside, and this here is the reward system, one of the oldest parts of the human brain. Its only job is survival. When you eat, when you're loved, when you connect with others, it releases dopamine to say, "This is good. Repeat this." He looked straight at Amelia. "But drugs, don't play by those rules." He tapped the model again with his pen. Stimulants hit the reward system directly. They produce dopamine levels 5 to 10 times higher than any natural pleasure on earth. He paused, letting the sentence sink in. It's like pushing the brain's pleasure button with maximum force. Amelia's eyes widened. For the first time, she understood why she had been pulled into that spiral so quickly. Kenji continued, "But the brain is smart. When dopamine skyrockets too intensely, too often, the brain thinks, something is wrong. I need to adjust." And when the brain tries to adjust, it does two things: reduces dopamine receptors, decreases natural dopamine production. The result? Every morning you wake up feeling worse than the day before. Not because your life got worse, but because your brain stopped producing normal levels of joy. Amelia clenched her hands together. That was exactly what she felt. Nothing interested her anymore. Not school, not friends, not dreams, not even herself. Kenji saw the despair in her eyes. "And then what happens?" He said softly, "You need higher and higher doses just to feel normal. Not happy, just less miserable. And every time you try not to use, your brain panics." He listed the symptoms: anxiety, insomnia, body aches, shaking, deep depression, dark thoughts that follow you like shadows. "You were never weak, Amelia," he said gently. "You're fighting a biological machine that's been reprogrammed." Her head dropped again. For the first time, someone was telling her the truth without blaming her. Not judging, not shaming, just explaining. Honestly, compassionately. "And there's another part," he said. He touched the frontal lobe again. When the reward system is overstimulated, the prefrontal cortex weakens. Your brain's brakes stop working. You know you should stop. You want to stop, but the brakes don't respond. A chill ran down Amelia's spine. For months, she had felt like exactly that. A runaway car speeding downhill, seeing the cliff getting closer, begging to stop, but unable to control the wheel. Kenji continued, "That's why addicted people say, I know this will kill me, but I can't stop." It's not an excuse. It's biology. Then he added slowly, "But here's the most important thing you need to hear." He set the brain model aside and looked at Amelia with deep warmth. "The brain can heal itself." Amelia looked up, almost in disbelief. "This ability is called neuroplasticity," Kenji explained. "It means the brain can create new pathways, restore dopamine receptors, and rebuild self-control. But it needs three things: time, the right strategy, and support from the outside." He gently held her trembling hand. "You are not broken. Your brain is not broken. You're wounded, and every wound can heal." Then he stood up and poured water into a glass that had a small hole at the bottom. "This," he said, "is what every addict carries inside, a broken cup." He poured more water. It leaked out immediately. You think you're filling it, but you're pouring into a cup that can't hold anything. He set the bottle down and looked deeply into her eyes. "The problem isn't the water. The problem is the hole." Silence filled the room for a long moment. Finally, he said, "We're not going to tell you to be strong or just stop. We're going to fix the hole. And when you start filling your cup with real things, purpose, connection, meaning, faith, and self-love, you'll no longer need the fake escape." Amelia felt her throat tighten. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like a failure. She felt salvageable. Kenji smiled softly. "That's when the rebirth begins." Part 4. Kishi. When the old self must die for the new self to be born. After the second session, Amelia walked out of the office with a strange feeling. Not relief, not happiness, but something like she had just seen a truth about herself she had avoided for years. In their third session, Dr. Kenji entered the room holding a blank sheet of paper with 3 overlapping circles. He smiled gently. "Amelia, today we're going to talk about the most important part of your journey. Kishi Kaisei." He wrote in large letters on the board. "Kishi Kaisei, to die and then come back to life." Amelia froze for a moment. Die. She had felt close to death many times before. But now this man was saying that she needed to die again. Kenji noticed the confusion in her eyes and explained, "In Japanese philosophy, Kishi Kaisei isn't literal death. It's the ending of your old version. It's the moment you let go of the self that was wounded, addicted, driven by pain. So the version of you that is wiser, stronger, and in control of your life can be born." He placed his hand on the brain model. "Right now, Amelia, you're fighting with the old brain, old habits, old pain. You can't force your way through that with willpower alone. We must build a new persona. From your brain, to your emotions, to your sense of purpose." He continued softly, "You will not quit. You will be reborn." Amelia blinked. "But how do I get reborn?" Kenji smiled as if he had heard this question 1,000 times, with 3 pillars: Kishi, Kaisen, Ikigai. He circled the 3 overlapping sections on the paper. The first pillar, Kishi Kaisei, rebirth. It means the old Amelia, The one who escaped her pain through drugs must come to an end. Not through shame, not through punishment, but through understanding, through realizing that the old version of you simply can't take you where you need to go. He held her gaze. When you release that old identity, you make space for the person you were always meant to become. Amelia stayed silent. Something inside her shifted. Painful, yes, but also freeing. As if a door had opened, Kenji continued. The second pillar. Pass on to 1% improvement every day. You don't need to change overnight. You don't need to become a new person tomorrow. You only need to be slightly better than you were yesterday. One small step. One small improvement. One small action. He leaned forward. The brain hates sudden change, but it loves slow, steady progress. That's how you rebuild yourself from the ground up. Amelia nodded slowly. She had heard the word kaizen before, but never understood it so deeply. Then Kenji wrote again, the third pillar. Ikigai, your reason for living. If you don't know why you live, you will always look for something to fill the void inside you. If not drugs, then loneliness, fear, or another unhealthy escape. He looked at her with quiet sincerity. And addiction, Amelia, isn't a substance problem. It's a void problem. Silence filled the room. You don't just need to stop, he said. You need something worth moving toward. Then he handed her the pen. Write this down, Amelia. Who do you want to become? Not today. 3 years from now. 5 years from now. Her hand trembled as she wrote. I want to study architecture again. I want to design sustainable homes. I want to be someone my mother is proud of. I want to be loved. I want to believe I deserve to live. Kenji read the words and nodded. That, he said, is the new Amelia. He ended the session with a sentence she would never forget. Addiction isn't defeated by fighting it. It's defeated when you build a life so full of purpose that the addiction no longer has a place to exist. That day, as Amelia walked out of the office, she felt something she hadn't felt since she was 14, hope, for the first time. She understood. She wasn't just trying to escape the darkness. She was stepping into her own rebirth. Part 5. 30 Days of Hell, and the first glimpse of light. When Amelia began her rebirth journey, she thought determination alone would carry her through. But she quickly learned the truth. The beginning of a new life always passes through hell. The first month, when the body fights back, Amelia entered a medical detox program. Day 1, Day 2, Day 3, manageable. But then her body started to realize the supply it depended on was gone, and the storm arrived. Tremors, cold sweats, nausea so strong she could barely stand, sleepless nights that felt endless, anxiety that squeezed her chest like an iron fist, physical pain that made her curl into herself like a frightened child. On day 7, Amelia broke down in the bathroom. Hands gripping the sink, she stared at her reflection and whispered, I can't do this. I can't. Right then, her phone buzzed. A message from Dr. Kenji. Pain doesn't mean failure. Pain means your brain is learning how to live without what it depended on. Amelia slid down to the floor. That one small message felt like a lifeline pulling her back from the edge. The first therapy sessions in week 2. She returned to see Kenji. He didn't ask whether she had relapsed. He didn't scold her. The first thing he said was, What did you survive yesterday? Amelia told him about the fear, the long sleepless nights, the moment she almost gave up. Kenji listened quietly. Then he wrote on the board, "Emotion is not danger," he explained. "Everything you're feeling is your brain's reaction to losing something it depended on. You are not the craving. You are not the fear. You are the one observing it." Then he taught her the first technique. Surf the urge. Don't fight the craving. Observe it like a wave. It rises, it peaks, and it always falls. Cravings last 15 to 30 minutes. If you don't react, they pass on their own. Amelia tried it for the first time right there in the session. Her body trembled, but she stayed with the feeling. And suddenly, it faded. For the first time in months, she felt something she thought she had lost, a sense of control. The loneliness crashes in by week 3. The physical pain eased, but loneliness grew louder. Her old friends avoided her. Family didn't know what to say. Some people looked at her with a mix of pity and fear. She once believed recovery meant removing a substance, but now she understood. Recovery means facing everything that substance used to hide. On night 19, Amelia lay awake, staring at the ceiling in the dark, whispering, "If rebirth feels this painful, can I even make it to tomorrow?" The first spark of hope on Friday, she attended a support group at a local church. At first, Amelia stayed silent. She didn't want to share. She feared judgment. But then a woman stood up and told her story. Losing her child, losing her job, losing everything, and still recovering. The woman cried while speaking, but her eyes shone with a kind of peace Amelia had never seen. Amelia broke. Tears streamed down her face uncontrollably. An older man beside her gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "No one here is perfect, child, but everyone here is climbing, one step at a time." In that moment, Amelia felt something she hadn't felt in years. She wasn't alone. Healing begins with the smallest things at the end of the first month. Kenji gave her 3 tasks. One thing for the body. Walk 20 minutes a day. One thing for the mind. Read 5 pages of a book. One thing for the soul. Write 1 line of gratitude or prayer every night. Kenji said, "Carson, just 1% a day. You don't need perfection. You just need to continue." And Amelia did. It was difficult, but she did it. Her body was still weak. Her soul still full of holes. But for the first time in years, she felt like she was coming back to life. Slowly, painfully, but truly. The end of the 30 days of Healon, day 30, Amelia looked at herself in the mirror. Her face was still thin, her eyes still tired. But something was different. She wasn't the old Amelia. She wasn't the new Amelia either. She was someone walking through darkness toward a higher version of herself. She whispered, "I haven't won, but I'm moving forward." And that was the true beginning of her rebirth. Part 7. The first fall. Amelia's relapse shattered her, but also became the turning point that made her stronger. Amelia had stepped into her 3rd month of recovery. The heavy waves of cravings had begun to ease. Her body trembled less. Her mind felt less chaotic. She even started sensing small rays of hope slipping back into her life. But just when she thought everything was finally settling, her first relapse happened. A day that seemed completely normal. It was day 57. In the morning, Amelia took her usual walk. She read her book, drank her tea, wrote her gratitude journal. She even felt proud. She had maintained her new habits for nearly 2 months. But that afternoon, her mother called. "Amelia, your father is in the hospital again." Her heart clenched. Her father, the man who had struggled with alcoholism for years, the one who had been absent from so much of her life, had collapsed again. All the memories of her childhood rushed back. The fights, the lonely dinners, his broken promises, and the way she used to wait for him in silent despair. The emotions were so strong they knocked the breath out of her. Kenji once said, "What brings a person back to addiction isn't the substance, it's the memory," and that day it became painfully true. 2. The collapse happened quietly, abandoned everything she had planned. She sat alone in her room, staring at nothing. The pain from the past, the guilt, the feelings of being unwanted, unworthy, everything resurfaced like a sea monster awakened from the deep. She began shaking. She tried to breathe the way Kenji had taught her, tried to ride the craving, tried to observe her emotions, but the pain was too real, too overwhelming. And in her weakest moment, she reached for her phone and called someone she should have cut off long ago. Hours later, she relapsed. It wasn't much. It didn't last long, but it was enough to destroy the trust she had built in herself. 3. The next morning, the worst moment. Amelia opened her eyes and felt as if the world had fallen apart. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, dark circles, a hollow gaze, and disappointment so deep it made her want to disappear. She held her face with trembling hands and whispered, "I ruined everything. I'm such a failure." And that right there is the most dangerous moment in recovery. People don't fall apart because of the substance. They fall apart because of the guilt after the relapse. **4. Kenji didn't scold her. He didn't judge. He didn't express disappointment. Amelia walked into the therapy room shaking. She kept her head down, expecting blame, anger, rejection, but Kenji simply looked at her gently and said, "Amelia, thank you for coming." That single sentence broke her into tears. He poured her a glass of water, sat beside her, and said, "A relapse is not the end. A relapse is a message." Amelia sobbed. "What message? I messed everything up." Kenji shook his head. "No. A relapse shows you where you were still hurting. It shows the wounds that haven't been healed. It tells you what needs attention so it won't happen again." He handed her a sheet of paper. "Write this down. What led to the relapse?" Amelia wrote, "Dad's hospitalization, childhood memories, feeling worthless, loneliness, fear of disappointing Mum, fear of repeating her father's life." Looked at the list and said softly, "This is not a list of weaknesses. This is a map for healing." Amelia froze for the first time. She understood. A relapse isn't going back to zero, it's information. 5. The turning point, Kenji said. "You made it today." 57. That doesn't disappear because of one mistake. It's still real. It's still your effort. Then he added, "Winners are not the people who never fall. Winners are the people who stand up more times than they fall." That day became a turning point for Amelia. Not because she instantly became stronger, but because she finally understood a relapse is part of the journey, not the end of it. When she walked out of the therapy room, she took a deep breath. The pain was still there, but for the first time since the relapse, she believed something new. I can still continue. And from that moment, her recovery entered a new chapter, steadier, clearer, and more real than ever. Part 8. The Comeback. When Amelia learned the power of standing back up the right way after her first relapse, most people would assume Amelia would collapse completely, that she would return to the starting point, that she would fall back into becoming a shadow of her former self. But what makes recovery different from what people imagine is this truth. People don't grow when they stay standing. People grow when they learn to rise. And that is exactly what happened to Amelia in the weeks that followed. 1. Learning to face shame instead of running from it. First thing Kenji taught her after the relapse was, don't try to become someone who has never fallen. Become someone who knows how to lift themselves back up. In the past, whenever she made a mistake, Amelia would retreat into darkness, avoiding everyone, skipping conversations, hiding from the world. But Kenji asked her to do the opposite. During session 61, he looked at her and said, describe exactly what happened. No avoiding, no denial. Amelia cried, her hands trembling. But she still recounted every detail. The fear, the childhood memories, her mother's call, her sense of worthlessness, the collapse. When she finished, Kenji simply said, you just won against yourself. She froze. Kenji explained, the truth doesn't destroy you. The truth frees you. And that was the first lesson of the comeback. You must face what you fear, because only by facing it can you overcome it. Point 2. Re-establishing boundaries. Refusing to let the past pull her back after. Analyzing the chain of events leading to the relapse. Kenji told Amelia to change 3 things. First, cut contact with all triggers. The person she called during her weakest moment, his name was the first on the list. Kenji instructed her to delete his number, block him, and sever all ties. Amelia hesitated. What if he needs something? Kenji shook his head. You are not responsible for saving someone else at the cost of destroying yourself. Those words hit her hard. She understood this wasn't selfishness. This was survival. Second, detach from all environments associated with old habits. Amelia was told to change her walking route, her coffee shop, her reading corner. Anything tied to the past had to go, Kenji said. An old environment always reminds you of your old self. Third, prepare a response. Plan. Kenji handed her a sheet titled, The 3-Minute Survival Plan. It included 60 seconds of breathing, 60 seconds of identifying emotions, 60 seconds of replacement action whenever overwhelming emotions resurged. Amelia had to follow this procedure. It sounded simple, but that 3-minute routine saved her from many nights where she nearly collapsed again. 3A. New truth. Recovery is not a straight line. In week 10, when she felt more stable, Amelia asked Kenji, do you think I can ever fully recover? Kenji smiled. You won't return to who you were, but you will also never be the same person you used to be. Recovery is a journey without a finish line, he continued. This path is like a winding road, sometimes uphill, sometimes downhill, sometimes exhausting. But the farther you walk, the stronger you become. Amelia sat quietly, absorbing the truth. Surviving doesn't mean standing still. Surviving means continuing to walk, even if the steps are slow. For a new confidence, a new strength. By day 75, Amelia realized 3 profound changes within herself. First, she no longer hated herself like before her. Relapse once made her feel worthless, but now she understood. Strength belongs to those who dare to begin again. Second, she knew how to prepare for bad days. She no longer panicked when emotions surged. She knew how to breathe, how to ask for support, how to protect herself. Third, she began believing she could live differently for the first time. Her hope was not an illusion. It had structure. It had reasons. It had methods. 5. A new door quietly opened during session 78. Kenji looked at her and said, "Amelia, you are no longer the hopeless girl who walked in on day 1. You are becoming someone you never believed you could become." Amelia remained silent. She didn't cry. She didn't shake. She didn't reject his words. She simply smiled gently and said, "I'm not perfect, but I'm moving in the right direction." And in that moment, she understood. A comeback isn't just continuing after a fall. A comeback is returning to yourself, a better version of yourself.